everyone. Welcome to the Breakdown, episode 125. We are Tanya Lee and Johanna Burkhardt.
Hey, hey, hey.
Welcome. So, we are going to be discussing tonight crystals, magical crystals.
I loaded up too. I got
You
all
loaded
kinds
up.
of them on.
I have a bunch on too. It's so natural for me to wear crystals. I don't even think about it. It's just part of my everyday wardrobe.
Right.
So what we wanted to really discuss about crystals, and not just because they're beautiful and we love wearing them, but there are certain beliefs on the usage of crystals, and we really wanted to dive deep on this tonight, especially with and I'm just going to break down a couple of things about crystals. The first, when you look at a scientific proof of it, okay, the scientific method, the history gone in it is that when it's with the scientific method, there has been no proof that crystals have any kind of proponents of this. They usually think it's the placebo effect, meaning that they can't say it's broken, but they say that they haven't been able to prove that these crystals work. So what does that put that into? It puts it into pseudoscience. And pseudoscience is its own thing. And that's the thing that's so beautiful about pseudoscience, is that if you have these beliefs, it's about an intent. But crystals have been used for not just this millennium. They have proponents, and crystals and gemstones have properties that facilitate healing. Many promote healing, allege that the history of this practice is ancient, dating back at least 6,000 years to the time of the ancient Sumerians of Mesopotamia. So there are various properties, and that's something that we wanted to dive deep into, but also, how you utilize crystals. And sometimes people are just really new to it. So it's like we wanted to have a beginner's guide, right? So what better way than to find a crystal guru who really knows a lot about this? And so we found a guest here, and we're going to bring her on. Her name is Amy Robeson. Amy is a gifted healer and spiritual mentor with a rare ability to clearly communicate high spiritual concepts, so her students become powerful healers in their own right. She has been gifted with the ability to tap into the depths of one's soul's desire to discover the inner dialogue that is preventing them from being in alignment with their true self. She's devoted into reconnecting people to their innate divine nature so they can experience more joy, abundance, and love in their lives. She is also she basically runs these master series classes on crystals. She has one called Crystal Emergence. We're going to give you more information on that later down when we're going to talk to her. But she helps really educate people on the world of crystals and how to utilize this magical energy of crystals on their highest capacity. So we are really excited to have her on board today. Johanna's going to invite her in.
She's coming. There she is.
Hi, Amy. We are so excited to have somebody who can really break it down for us, because there's so much information on crystals. I know that sometimes when I go to these metaphysical shops, I am overwhelmed with probably joy, because I love crystals to begin with, just from not even from the properties aspect, but just because I love rocks.
Oh, yeah.
So I have a question for you. When did your passion start with this?
So I've actually grown up with crystals my whole life. So my mom collected crystals when she was a kid. My grandma collected crystals. So I've been around crystals pretty much my entire life. And I really started getting into the spiritual properties and the healing properties of them in my 20s. But I started really collecting them or understanding the importance of them in my teens.
Wow. That's a long time.
Yeah. I love them.
Yeah, it's funny because I used to be really into crystals, but I really didn't know any aspects of it from the intent of how they can help with healing. So I didn't know that until later on in life. So it was weird because I was like, I guess, guided to collect a lot of this stuff when I was younger, and then I had all of it already.
I had geodes. I would go and get geodes or crystals. And, I was always spiritually open, even, my whole life. But I never, it wasn't until I woke up that I was like, Wow, I've really been into these for a long time and I had no idea why. I just thought they were pretty.
That's what, that's the majority of people. They're not really sure why they're attracted to it, but they're attracted to it and they purchase them or they collect them. And what I think it becomes really, really magical is when you understand why you're collecting them and then you put them to use. Because if you have just a few crystals in your house, they're still working on you on a consistent basis. They're made up of energy. We're made up of energy. And it all starts with just the desire of looking and touching and grabbing and wanting. And then from there, if you work with them, they'll work with you and you'll develop a deeper relationship over time with them. But it just starts with great curiosity. And they're really pretty to look at and hold. And
Yeah.
There's so many different variations of it, from jewelry
Mm-hmm.
to just the rocks themselves. You can make it. You can actually get the stones and actually make necklaces on there. So I feel like there's so many aspects of it that, people can utilize in their home. And like you said, they're pretty too, to just have in the house.
Well, I have a question because, I work with a lot of crystals, but one thing that people ask me, and I don't know the answer to this, and maybe you will, is there's always seems to be a price difference sometimes when you go into a store. And I noticed that some people will say, like, well, that crystal isn't of highest quality, so the vibration isn't going to be the same, or it's not going to work the same. And I always wondered about that. Do you have any kind of insight on that?
Yeah, so higher quality crystals are going to be priced more. So let's take amethyst for an example. There's going to be A quality amethyst, B quality amethyst, and so on and so forth. And the higher the quality, the more money it's going to cost. But that doesn't mean a lower grade crystal shouldn't be worked with, because you might find a rough raw stone in the river and that baby is vibrating in your hand. It is going to serve you. It's going to bring forth the energy that it wants to bring forth to work with you or assist you in whatever your heart's desires with that crystal. Because basically crystals are elemental beings. Like, you can think of every crystal as a spirit guide, and they're here to assist in directing your energy and assist you in bringing energy in to manifest whatever you're wanting to manifest. So in regards to like quality, you can have like some really like museum piece qualities, and then you can have some very low grade rough stones, and some of them will vibrate higher, but at the end of the day, it's what that person's attracted to is all that matters.
And that's good. That's a good point to make, because that's what I do when I go into a shop is I hold it and I feel the stone, right? But if you're new and you're not that tuned in, is there a way for people to kind of discern, or is it just them trusting like this is
That's
the
a good
one?
question.
Trust
This is the one.
Yes. Trust is a major factor in it. And then the other thing is if you notice that you're walking around the store and you still have the same crystal in your hand, it's usually a sign that it's supposed to go home with you. So it just depends. I do a lot of wholesale purchases, but sometimes I'll walk into a retail shop and I'll find something that I absolutely have to have because I know it belongs to me.
Yeah.
And I always say, don't worry about the cost. Obviously, budget is concerned, but if it is slightly outside your budget and you're drawn to it and you can't stop thinking about it, make sure you buy it.
Yeah. I agree with that.
Yeah.
That's a really good point too, because I mean, Johanna and I she visited me last year and we went into a shop together, and her and I were like two giddy girls in a toy shop just walking around, but we were both attracted to a couple of the same stones, which was interesting.
Well, if you guys are good friends too, you can be picking up on each other's stones.
Yeah.
So, and of course, like attracts like too. So if you guys are on the same wavelength, a lot of the times you're going to be attracted to similar stones or the same stone.
What do you feel is a good, because I mean, it's one thing, and there's so many stones out there and so many of them have different properties. And I find that a lot of times when I'm going in there, some people have different intentions on what those properties mean. Do you have any advice on that as to some of the intents on these stones, on the healing and so forth?
Yep, absolutely. So here's the thing. You pick up a crystal book. The crystal book description for that crystal is the author's experience with that crystal. So you can pick up the crystal and have a similar experience, or you may pick up the crystal and have a totally opposite experience. It doesn't mean the author's experience is wrong or your experience is wrong. It means your experience is what you're experiencing, and the author's experience is what she or he was experiencing. And the main thing is it's important that you just work with it, and you develop a relationship to see how that particular crystal and the properties in that crystal want to work with you. And over time, the relationship will deepen and deepen and deepen, just because you're in communication with that particular crystal or crystals.
That's really interesting. I am a tarot reader,
Mhm.
and that's kind of how I utilize cards. I have a structured meaning of what some of these cards mean and so forth. But when you use your intuition, and that's really what it's about, is how it means to you or what it feels. And it's interesting that you state that, because I feel like with intuition is basically a whole trust thing, on the trust within yourself, right? So I
Sure.
think that was a really good point that you made, because I sometimes we get so into like, what does this mean? Or what does this stone mean? And we're fixated on what the book says, and not so much how we feel. So I think that's really awesome that you stated
Yeah.
that, because I think that's really important, that it's how it makes you feel and what you think it means.
And I don't feel like
Yeah.
you need to know the why, because use crystals in my DNA activations or my crystal grids or healing. And some of the times I just literally am drawn to certain crystals, and I don't know every crystal property. I don't know what it's going to do, but I know that it needs to be a part of whatever it is I'm doing. It wants to play in that energy, so it is, I agree. I believe it's completely on trust.
Yeah, it's on trust. And like for you, Johanna, it's like you're really connected with your knowing. So you just kind of lean into it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that I think when you're just awakening, or you're approaching your spiritual practices, because I think like working with crystals is definitely a spiritual practice. And I think if you're a newbie, you're wanting to get it so right, but just throw the book out, because it has
So
nothing to do with getting it right.
so
It
true.
has to do with trust and leaning into trust and following the energy as it presents itself to you. And crystals will assist you in that as well, which is pretty awesome. So if you're wanting to trust, go find a crystal to find trust.
Definitely.
So, what are some things, like if you have a newbie out here and you say, okay, you give them the advice of use your intention on these stones. Is there any other advice beyond that as to how to utilize these stones? Because once the people have the stones, it's like, what do I do with it? Do I just put it out? Do I meditate with it? What do I do? So, are there some practices that you feel that you can utilize this stone and enhance yourself?
Right. I think that if you're just touching the stone, that's a great practice. Holding it, meditating with it, placing it in grids. It really, the possibilities of how you're drawn to work with it is endless. And I always say that there's an infinite possibilities of what the crystals can do for you. It's up to you to use your imagination, but I just say start with holding it, placing it on your body, laying it around you, on you, in front of you, wherever it is, as long as they're in your energy field, so you can start to connect with the energy field of the crystal. And if you can hold it, it's easier to start to get that tangible, because you have something tangible to hold on to, as as opposed to just kind of staring at it off in the distance in the room. So if you can touch it, it makes it a little easier to connect to at first.
Tomasa says, I agree about crystal experience, just like animal totems. Yeah, I mean, I
I
agree
love
with
it.
that as well. Yeah, it's pretty cool. And Vicky says that she uses the muscle test when she is seeing which stone intention for her. So that's, you can do, it's kind of like basically using yourself as a pendulum as to what it is. So I think that's really cool to use. What are, so Amy, what are some cool general stones for people to really start out with? If they don't have a direction and they're not, I'm not saying they can't use their intention, but do you have any go-to stones you're like, hey, you should have quartz. Hey, you should have this in here.
Well, quartz is a given. Quartz is an amplifier, a manifesting stone. It is an amazing stone. So clear quartz is always a good one. Amethyst is usually the first stone most people are attracted to. This is great for assisting in awakening. It's also great for clearing and protecting yourself as well. And so if you're an empath and you're constantly taking on other people's energy, this is going to help protect your energy field or any like psychic attacks. If you're worried about people thinking badly of you or anything like that, this is an excellent stone. The other stone I say, like for beginners, is smoky quartz. Smoky quartz is a grounding stone. Yeah. Everybody pulls up their crystals.
Got a whole wall full of them.
Yeah, it's the smoky quartz is a grounding stone, but it also connects you. It creates this beautiful energetic plug into Gaia, Mother Earth. And that right there, working with this, will help you start to connect with the crystalline energy within Gaia. And it's, even though it's a grounding earth stone, it's a manifesting stone at the same time. And so you can use this to ground. And then the other stone that I would suggest is labradorite. This is also a protection stone. Ooh.
My favorite.
That is Johanna's favorite.
It's a protection stone, and it's the stone of magic. And so I love this particular stone.
That's got a lot of fire in it. Look at that one.
It does.
That's beautiful.
And this one, I really like this because I think when you start to awaken and you start to play with particular energy, your field of awareness starts to really change. So I think that crystals are just in general great for protecting your energy while you're expanding your awareness and playing in different realms. And so this particular stone is going to bring on the magic and the wind element and open up the upper chakras, while citrine,
that's one of my favorites.
Mine too.
Gonna help you manifest, take action. This is a great fire element stone. And then I also like, for a fire element, is carnelian. And carnelian,
that's a beautiful one,
is amazing because it is a fire element stone, but I find that carnelian and citrine have two different action abilities. They're both great manifesting stones. This puts more of the willingness and the softness into manifesting, where citrine's going to like the fire under your butt to get going. So this is a little bit of a softer fire stone.
I like that. That's a great discernment there. I really liked that.
Oh, thanks. And then this one is rose quartz, and it's a water element stone. This is actually the first stone that I remember my mom ever giving me when I was a teenager. And this is to bring on love. And I think anytime you work with water element stone, it's going to bring on, it's going to bring you more into your, balance out your emotional bodies and assist you in connecting into your heart center and bringing yourself into a place of receiving. And that's, your heart is your bridge to your inner and outer world. So the more that you can connect in with that, the easier it's going to be for you to recognize opportunities or assist you in taking a leap of faith whenever you want to take a leap of faith. But those are just some really simple, easy stones. Oh, and I know the other stone too. I wanted to say, I put a bunch of stones right here.
Have yourself
Make
ready.
Sure I can show. So black tourmaline.
Yeah.
Is a grounding stone. It's also a purifying stone. It's going to purify any low vibrating energy and transmute it into usable energy. Everybody needs a piece of black tourmaline.
I have so much of that. You have no idea. But I have a question because it's a dark stone and a dark takes, a lot of the negativity on there. I have obsidian as well. I'm extremely sensitive to obsidian. So I have to be wary of, holding on too much because sometimes I can feel too much emotion. Have you ever experienced that or have you heard of that?
So, particularly for obsidian or for just a crystal in general?
Yeah, for a crystal in general.
So the crystals work with you, and it's based on your energy, how you're feeling for today, and what is happening for you. And the way that I teach crystals and understanding of crystals are working with your bodies, and you have an emotional body, spiritual body, mental body, physical body. And so if you're experiencing intense emotion, it's shining a light on one of your bodies that could possibly be out of balance. You can also, it also depends on the stone too, because not all the same stones you can have two pieces of obsidian and you could be holding them both, and one gives you an intense emotion and the other one doesn't. And it's because they each have their own special properties and special strengths. And so if a particular crystal is causing like a lot of energy to rush in and you're not really sure what to do with it, you can back off and like let the crystal go. But yes, it's because it's working with your particular body and it's shining a light on something that's usually out of balance.
Right. I had an experience with quartz because I can't, some people sleep with their crystals in their room, and there's certain crystals I can't sleep with because I'm up all night. I'm up all night. I'm astral projecting. I'm like, I can't have them underneath my pillow.
I've had to have clients too remove. They'll be like, I can't sleep. I'll be like, okay, so tell me like about your environment. And they'll be like, I have selenite and this and that under my bed and on my nightstand. I'm like, whoa, let's maybe remove some of those a little bit.
Yeah.
Call it back.
Yeah. I was definitely in mood with it.
I chuckle because I'm so used to crystals all around me. So like it doesn't affect me. However, I do know, because whenever I host a retreat, I have crystals everywhere. Yeah. And some people are very sensitive to it because it's such an intense energy. And depending on the element of the crystal, like if you have a wind element and a stellar element, which has all of the elements in it, or a fire element, and you're sensitive to the crystal and energy, not a good idea to have those in your room when you're sleeping. Now you can have a water element crystal like rose quartz or apophyllite or emerald, or even some grounding crystals, possibly. It just depends on you and your energy. Like for me, I don't feel right unless I have a big gigantic brick of selenite under my bed, but that's just me. But other people, it's way too much. Mm-hmm. And so it don't compare your experience to anybody else, because it's what works for you and your energy, especially as you're acclimating and refining and attuning your energy more to the crystalline energy within your house and the stones that you have around you.
And I feel as you awaken and your awareness widens and your vibration raises, you're able to, like, the way that you interact with stones and the way that they interact with you is going to change. Like my house is like yours, probably. It's covered in huge crystals everywhere. And my daughter she's not used to that. So when she stays here, she gets like crazy headaches and she's just like, I can't sleep, Mom. And, it gets so intense, but I love it. The only stone that still gets to me if I wear it for more than 2 or 3 days is moldavite. That one will kick my butt.
That you got to be very careful with that stone, and because it will sweep you off into the ethers. And so if you are new to stones or you haven't worked with moldavite, it's important that you work with it in small doses to see how you react to it.
Yeah.
Where me, I want to sleep with it.
I do too. I sleep with it, but it's usually when I'm going through a big healing something or moving through something, I'll wear it, but I can only wear it for a couple of days and then I have to take it off because it becomes way too much. But one thing that I wanted to touch on that is crystal grids. Cause I remember early on in my journey, I was so into them. I was like, oh, I want to know all about them. Does they have to be a certain way and a certain thing? And while I understand it now, if you're brand new and you're wanting to create a crystal grid, is there a particular patterning or way? Can you talk a little bit about doing that?
So for grids, there's many philosophies out there on what you should and should not do. I personally take an intuitive approach, and the way I teach my clients how to do it is I talk about the shapes and the formations, but it's intent. And so if you're wanting to build a grid, you could just build a grid. Just build a grid. That's it. Simple. Just build something, and it's the intent that's behind it. What takes it to the next level is understanding what the advanced intention setting is, how to activate it, and the importance of the shape if you're wanting to use the shape on top of the intention. But when you're just getting started, it doesn't matter. Just intuitively start making it, and don't deem anything right or wrong, because there's nothing right or wrong. It's how you were guided to make it.
She's a woman after my own heart.
Yeah, right. I mean, because here's the thing, because listen, I've been there to that extent too, when you're new and you're like, I have to do something a certain way. I have to say a certain thing, and I have to make things and you're like following directions, right? And trying to make somebody else's intention, and you're doing all this stuff. And it's like, all of a sudden it's a science project. And it's so important that, these are myths out here that you're really, it's no different than an altar, right? There's no right or wrong way. You're creating your own space. You're creating your own intentions. You're making it work for you and what feels right. And the whole key word is feeling, right?
Yeah.
Feeling. So I think that's pretty cool. I have a question, and someone brought it up. They said that one of their crystals had broke. And what is your feelings on that when crystals break?
Celebrate it. The reason why is you break something, you break a leg, you break a hip, you break a crystal, you're breaking a habit.
Okay.
You're breaking a pattern. Doesn't matter what you're breaking a pattern or habit. So if you break a crystal, it's great.
Okay.
It's good news. Even if it's sad, it's good news.
So, some people will say you have to retire that crystal. You shouldn't use that crystal anymore. And I always wondered about that, because belief is, let's be real. Everything is belief. I stuff my bra full of crystals sometimes around certain people because I believe it will keep them away from me. So, I
do that too.
Yeah. But I'm just saying, so I was always curious, because I've heard that if you're like these little bracelets, right? So you'll go somewhere and all of a sudden it snaps and the beads go everywhere. And I'm just like, well, apparently this is where they wanted to live. So I'm going to leave them there,
Yeah. You can do that. And, every crystal has a purpose and a mission, and, it just depends on the crystal and how you're setting it up for success. And I talk about this in the free masterclass that I do on how to set your crystals up for success. It doesn't matter if it's chipped or broken. This crystal can still be used if it wants to still be used, and how you're using it might change. So, the beads, for example, the beads in the bracelet, let's say you broke it in your room, and then you're like, okay, now I have beads all over the floor. You're not going to leave them there, right?
No.
But you can pick them up, and you might go, hey, these would actually be really great to place in my grid today. And so you just find a different use for them. Or if it's a bracelet, maybe they want to be with other beads and they don't want to be in that sequence anymore. So there's infinite possibilities of how you can end up using it, but it doesn't mean that the crystal doesn't want to be used anymore. Sometimes it doesn't, and then you're supposed to go bury it or do whatever you want with it. But I have lots of broken crystals and they work just fine.
I love that, because I always am like, I don't want to get rid of it. I don't want to retire it. I want to use it.
I still keep them. I mean, even if it's broken, I'll keep it in my bowl or something like that on the side if it's not something that I wear. So I do the same thing. What for you, for the aspects of healing, have you seen any health benefits as well, just even from the emotional healing?
Oh yeah. So crystals they can work on you physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And depending on the crystal, will work on that particular body. But if you want to understand abstract concepts, you can work with the crystal. Let's say you're having some digestive issues, you can work with the crystal for that. One of my tummy ache crystals that I usually always use is selenite. Like if I have a stomach ache, I'll just pop the selenite right on my belly and it usually makes it go away. I have a crystal, it's a stellar beam calcite crystal. Anytime I have super bad nerve pain, I'll take that crystal, I'll place it on the spot, and within 5 minutes, I'm starting to feel better. And
Mhm.
so it depends on the person and the intention and their connection with it. And that's again why using your intuition is so important, because you might find a crystal that really assists you in something physically, but in a book you don't see that as the description. Does not mean it's not working. And for me, I had terrible eczema on my hand, and it looked like someone took a meat pounder to my hand, and I was like, I gotta start fixing this. And so I finally was like, all right, I'm just going to make some gem water. And gem water you can digest. Um, and as long as if you're putting the physical crystal in the water, you got to make sure it's non-toxic. And if it's a toxic crystal, there's another method to that. But within 2-3 days, all my eczema was gone off my hand. And it was just from the gem water. And
Daily.
so
Every
Daily,
day I
yeah.
have gem water.
yeah. And it's one of those things that, I was struggling with it for over a year and a half, and it didn't occur to me to just like digest, right? Like sometimes we have all these tools, but we forget some of the tools. And I was like, finally, I'm like, I got to do something different. What should I do? And
Yeah.
I was like, got to make this big batch of gem water, and it was completely gone. And then my husband proposed like 4 days later. So I was like, oh, thank God.
Your hand's clear.
I was like, holy cow, that would have been embarrassing.
Good timing.
Yeah. And I think what's really cool about that is because for those of us who are in more the science thing, with the fact that, we have the scientific method for, like I said in the beginning of this episode, for some, they believe it's a placebo effect, meaning that they put something in there and it does magically clear it up. And they're like, no, it must be the placebo effect, but it's never been proven wrong. So that's why they consider it pseudoscience. And I think, isn't it a beautiful thing that you can just accept with the pseudoscience that the intention is actually really clearing it, that you can have an open mind and expand that, because there's way more possibilities than when you just put it into a frame of what science is, right? So I think that's pretty cool. And I think especially with stones, no stone is alike, really. I mean, if you're cutting from them. So a lot of the stuff that you had said is really, I think, profound. Just the fact when you said that you can hold two of the same kind of stone, but it's still different, because scientifically it's not the same either.
Mm-mm.
It's not, even if you break it from the same stone, like it's different matter. So I think that's pretty cool that you had note that.
Yeah, I love it. And it's one of those things where you think about all the quartz points, right? Like there's all these different quartz points that you can go and collect, but within each quartz points, there's different shapes and formations and special little hidden treasures in those. And that makes up a different type of energy on each quartz that you're picking up. And it doesn't have to be a point. It could be just any type of crystal in general, and the way it's shaped some changes as well. And there's so many, it's just the possibilities of what the crystal looks like, feels like, acts like is endless. And it's pretty cool when you think about it.
Now, have you had an experience with a client where they had a really profound story with working with crystals?
Oh, I've had all sorts of crystal. So we have, I teach the Akashic records using crystals to open the records. Everything that I do is infused with the crystalline energy, some way, shape, or form, because it's just a tool within the toolbox. And so I've had clients, I was just telling one of my other clients that I've had, their stories are sometimes more cooler than I could ever experience, just because of the things that they experience. But, some of them will literally see the crystal change before their eyes.
Wow.
Because if you're the rightful owner, it's going to unlock something. And when it unlocks something, that means, there's something very special within it, and it's up to you to go and get it. And the other cool thing is, like, I usually unlock things for people when I touch their crystals. So it will look one way when it first starts, and then it will look a completely different way once I touch it. And I had a client that had a star sapphire, and we were talking about it, and then I hand it back to her and I tell her how amazing it is, and she looks back down at it, and there's 2 stars in it, and she's had it pretty much since she was a teenager, or her grandmother gave it to her, and so she's never seen 2 stars in it ever. And so,
now I want you to touch my crystals.
Different perception. Is it going to change before my eyes?
We're becoming more and more crystalline, and we're going from carbon-based being to crystalline being. And the more where people are being drawn more and more and more and more and more to crystalline energy. And yes, starting with the tangible crystals is great, but you can use that energy throughout the day in everything you do. And the more that you use it, the more you're actually awakening your crystal light body. And that's a part of the ascension. That's a part of your sovereignty. And so the more that you work with the crystalline energy, the better. Like, it's
so true though, because I can tell you that there are times when I look down at myself and I see crystals underneath my skin, and you can just see the speckles, you can see it. And the more that my, your multidimensional body integrates, and it's freaking trippy as hell. It doesn't matter how awake you get. I swear, sometimes I'm just like, I am always just blown away at how amazing we are. We are amazing.
It's no different from seeing colors as well. When you see things in a certain way, and all of a sudden you look at it and you're like, why is it, throwing that color all of a sudden? So it's no different than that. It's pretty cool.
So let's talk about cleansing crystals.
Cleansing.
Because everybody's like, how do I do it? Do I put it in the moonlight? Do I use selenite? Do I bury
sunlight
it?
too?
Sunlight, and my personal take is it depends. Like for me, most of the time, I just do whatever I feel called to do. But again, when you're first waking up, you're like, there's only a right way to do things. So what are some of the different ways of clearing crystals?
So clearing is a necessary, important step. And you can use selenite. You could just simply set the crystal on top. Citrine is actually another crystal that you can cleanse crystals with. So you can just set it on top of there. You can use sunlight, you can use sound, you can use Reiki, you can use water, you can use smoke, and you can use moonlight too. It just really depends on you, the amount that you have also, because taking all of your crystals out to the moonlight might not be conducive if you have a lot.
It takes a while.
Yes. And then, but you just want to cleanse them on a consistent basis. So you want to be careful that you don't put certain crystals in water. You can also use salt as well. So it just depends on the crystal and how it wants to be cleansed too.
When would you suggest that somebody cleanse a stone?
Right, when they get it.
I feel like you can feel it.
Well, yeah, right, when you get it. But I mean, like, so, okay, you have it, right? So someone new, they go and they buy the smoky quartz and they're like, well, how often and when do I cleanse it? So what would you tell somebody who is new to using crystals? That once they get it, yes, definitely. But then after that, is it every time you use it, or?
That's a good habit to get into, but most people don't do it. So it just depends. It depends on how often you're using it. It depends on what you're using it for. It really just depends. And so when in doubt, clean it. Like, clean it as often as you possibly can.
I do. I'm a clean freak in general. So I clean, and I'm using my cards 24/7. So I always have my crystals with my cards, but I definitely clean a lot more than typical, probably more than I need to. But the other thing that comes down to this, and I got to go on this mythology, because this makes me feel, and I was actually just talking to a friend last night about it, because I had gifted him some crystals and he doesn't really know enough about it, but he's going through some stuff and he said, hey, I kept my crystals out that you gave me. And I said, have you cleaned them? Like, I was like, he's like, no, I don't know how to do that. So I was kind of giving him the brush of what you said. And then I said, and then you charge them. And then I was just like kind of joking about it. And then, because I feel like with this whole charge thing, that sometimes it makes it sound like it's like this superhero thing that you do. So can you talk a little bit about what it is about this word charge when you're done cleaning these crystals?
I'm just laughing because I think in every industry, there's like special words that fly over people's heads.
I do. And I feel that same way. And it makes me joke. So that's why I wanted to get your take on it.
Yeah. So, charging a crystal could be, it's like, think about, your battery in your cell phone. The energy goes down, you plug your phone in, the energy goes back up. The battery goes back up. So the crystal, you can charge it, and you can charge it with intent, or you can charge it in the moonlight or a full moon or new moon. Lots of people like to charge, and I put in quotation, charge their crystals in with the moonlight, which is great because it brings in the sacred feminine energy. But it's just intention. Like, it's not, there's nothing, it's one of those things where it's just, there's no special formulation of things you have to do. If you set the intention that the crystal is charging, it's going to charge. If you're new to it and you have no idea what it is, and you're like, I've been working with my crystal, it hasn't ever been charged. It probably has been, because it's working on you in some way, shape, or form. So it's like, that's something that I don't get really caught up in.
Yeah, no, and I thank you for stating that, because I'm not joking for the people who state it, but I do know some folks who make this thing of this big deal about charging it, and I'm like, but you cleared it, you put the intention on it, it's working. Like, it's
I'll tell you, the only time I charge
crystals,
when I charge crystals, it's when I do a grid. So if I'm doing a grid for a particular reason, right? So for me particularly, I don't do a grid unless I, get the download to do the grid, and then I'll sit there and I'll charge it with energy for that intention. Or if I'm gifting somebody something, I will charge it for them with energy. But other than that, I just cleanse mine, and I never understood the whole charging thing. I never even used the moonlight for charging it. I do use the intention. I love putting my crystals under a full moon. I love that feminine energy. But me too, I agree with you with the charging. I feel like it's for a specific intention or purpose.
Right. And don't think I use that word because I haven't, like, even when you said, I'm like, I don't think I've used that word in a while or a long time.
In some of the spiritual guru, you know, it's pretty common. And I have to laugh when I look at it, or if you look up certain things about it, there's like, this is what you do. You get your stone and then you clean it and then you charge it. And I'm like, wait a minute, what?
So I think, it comes down to words again. And I think words hold a particular energy. And for me, Johanna, when you were just talking about it, it's more of an infusion of energy as opposed to charging it.
Yeah.
The moon is infusing it.
Yeah.
And so I don't know, it's teach their own, whatever you're called to call it.
I mean, let me tell you, there are days where I have a whole bunch of smoky quartz or other grounding stones underneath my butt, and I really feel like I'm plugging into the earth because I'm such a starseed, right? So there are times where, like today, I've been flying really, really high with this energy, and so I have to sit on it or hold a bunch of grounding crystals and really keep myself, because when you get a bunch of starseeds together, it's really easy to float off. You have to really keep yourself down. So I'm like, all the help I can get.
Do you remember when we had our joint reading, Johanna, and I had tourmaline, like I was sitting on it?
Yeah.
And you were like, I'm so at it. I'm like, yeah, I was fine. I sat on tourmaline the whole time.
Right. And so that's why ever since then I've been sitting on crystals. I'm just going to plug into the earth. Here we go.
I'm like, I don't care how silly it sounds.
Oh, it's totally not silly at all. There's, I don't know what the mats are called, but they have these new mats out that are infused with crystal, like
grounding
grounded crystals, and it's a flat mat, and you can sit on it
like a yoga mat.
No, it's like just like a little placeholder mat.
Oh, I need that for work.
I need that.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll
immediately.
Yeah, I'll have to get it from one of my clients and friends. She was just telling me about it. I touched it. I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. I think I'm gonna grab one just to stand while I'm standing at my desk.
Right.
So I mean, there's all these things. They're so awesome.
And it's cool that there's so many people utilizing it with their gifts. And that's really what's awesome. I have a really she's an amazing artist. She's amazing herbalist, and she infuses it within her products, crystals. And I'm always amazed by people who do this. Johanna uses crystal grids and so forth, but a lot of people are utilizing it. And I think that's awesome. Like you said, it's a toolkit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think
it's really cool.
The more you play, because it's just playing, the more you play with it, the more they reveal, and the more they reveal, the more you keep wanting to play.
Yeah. It's true. And just start, like she said, like with just playing with it. Don't think you're going to hurt somebody or do anything, because it is all about your attention. Because I remember when I first started doing energy healing, I was all of a sudden drawn to like start bringing crystals into that. And I had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea what the crystals meant. I didn't know what half of them were freaking called, but I could feel the difference in what I was doing. And so it opened the door, it added something in. So it just get some and touch it and hold it and play with it and just be open to whatever it has to offer you. I totally agree with that.
And it's just so cool to go to a metaphysical shop and actually look at like all this different stuff.
I wanted to ask Amy, I know you did a retreat in Sedona. I think we were actually doing retreats at the same time last year.
Oh, really cool.
Yeah. Or it was this year. Maybe it was this year. I can't remember. Anyway, but did you ever go to the one, I don't know if it's in Phoenix, but it's the one with the gigantic crystals outside. I think it's called Raw Earth or something like that. It's in Arizona. Cool. I mean, it's got ones that are like bigger than us. They're just huge.
Like you can actually go inside them. I've seen some of those ones.
Yeah. There's pictures on my Instagram of that, but I was wondering if you've ever been there, because I mean, I'm used to having a lot of crystals, but let me tell you, 5 minutes in that store and you're like having an out of body experience.
Yeah.
Because these things are gigantic. And I was just like, oh my God. I told my husband, I said, do you think we could ship it home?
So one of my favorite things to do, because lots of people, when you start working with crystals, a lot of people are like, I want to feel the crystal. I want to feel the crystal. easiest way to feel a crystal is to find a store that has big crystals or a gem show or something like that, because it's easier to feel them. And you can go up to the crystal, and we'll just pretend this is it. And when you put your hand up to it, like when it's gigantic, you can feel this wave of energy. It just goes wah, wah.
Oh
wah.
gosh, yeah.
You can hear
And
it.
the bigger it is, the easier it's going to be to feel it, because when you get something tiny like this, it's harder to feel the energy in the beginning if you're not used to it. And then sometimes you'll get this tiny little speck of a stone and it's vibrating in your hand, but it's awakening your energy. So the easiest thing to do is just go up to those big pieces and feel it, because their energy field is I think bigger than ours when they're that big.
Sure. I'll have to send you the name of the store, so the next time you're in that area, you can take a little trip over there, because the stones are unreal. It's just so magical.
So we are already getting to the tail end of the show, but before we get to that, Amy, I want you to talk a little bit about your crystal masterclass, because I want to allow our audience to know about this, because I think it's a pretty cool thing.
So it's free, and it's a 4-day free masterclass series. And I'm going to go through how crystals actually work, their elements, how grids actually work. And I actually build a grid in the masterclass. The grids to this grid particularly, the intention was to create the most optimal day, to assist in having the most optimal day. And then I also talk more about the crystal light body and what that looks like. And I do a crystal light body healing activation on the call as well. And so it's a 4-day class. It's absolutely free. And then you get 2 little gifts from me too, which is 2 different crystal booklets. One is for intuition and one's for manifesting, the 3 stones for each one of those topics. But it's 4 days, it's free, and you'll get access to it. And then you have a limited time to watch the replays for it as well. So if you go to crystalemergence.com, it's absolutely free. And I think you have it with the link here too.
Yeah, we'll put a link in the description box below when the show's over, so you guys can go and click on that and take advantage of that. It's very generous of you, and we're so thankful and grateful that you were able to bring that to our audience.
Right, absolutely. And if anybody wants more information on Amy, you can go to her website too, theamyrobeson.com. And you can find all the information you can on Amy and
What's
other
the name of
things
your
that she
Facebook
offers.
group again? It's Sacred
Awakening.
Sacred Awakening.
Yeah. So
Excellent.
I do free stuff all the time. Like I'll be doing a free fall equinox healing on there. I think Monday's fall is the equinox, I think.
I think so.
Yeah, it's coming up already. Time flies.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, I know. And it's just like when you're Johanna, where you're like, I think it was last year, maybe it was this year. It's
I know,
like,
it just blends all together.
Yeah, it does. I can't believe it's September.
Is there anything that you want before you go? Is there anything that you want to finalize or let us know outside of the master class? If there's one thing that we should be left on with this show, what would it be for you?
Just follow the energy of your heart. If you're guided to crystals, work with them, dive deeper into them, and just follow your own intuition, and don't worry about if you're doing it right or wrong. Take what you love, what resonates, and throw out the rest, because some of the stuff that we talked about today resonates and some may not. Just leave what doesn't and run with what does.
Yes, love it. Let's all go crystal shopping now.
I know. It's one of my favorite things to do.
It is too. It is one of my favorite pastimes to do it. To go, and I can be in those stores for hours. I could be in those stores for hours easily.
They're like a time warp.
They are. And then the worst, well, it's not the worst, but when you find other people, because this is what happens to me, is I end up starting to have a conversation. And then all of a sudden, next thing you know, you're in there chit chatting with somebody of how they utilize the stones. or even the
Mhm.
people in there who are really, really informative on there and are passionate about it. I always find that anybody who works at these metaphysical stores are so passionate. So they have all this information and it's like, I feel like I'm walking into a museum. Like, I can't leave.
Oh,
Yeah.
for
So
sure.
yeah, very cool. Well, thank you. We appreciate it for sure.
Thank you guys. So this was a lot of fun. Thank you for having me.
Yay.
Yeah.
Well, Amy, you stay there. We're going to wrap up. Thank you guys for joining us today. And be sure to check back in just a little while and you can get the link to her beautiful free offering.
Yes. And for those of you who are on, please take the time to go ahead and like the video. That helps us. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please go ahead and hit subscribe on YouTube. And for the people who are listening to us on the replays on podcast, like I said, you can get most of that information that we utilize that we set out here with the website, but it's crystalemergence.com for that free crystal class. So check it out.
Awesome.
All
All right,
right.
you
Take
guys.
care.
Thank you.
Bye.